Mm-hmm. You all thought this wasn't going to come. Howdy all, it's Sam. Hope you're all doing really well. If you're new around these parts, I hope I can convince you to like and subscribe the content and the channel. And if you are a regular around these here parts, thank you very much for the continuous support. So let's get stuck into North Queensland Cowboys' 2021 season review. Unfortunately, just behind the Roosters, North Queensland were the second most affected team when it came to injuries and suspensions this year. The club used a total of 34 players, 7 club debutants, 5 of which were first grade debuts. Fortunately, however, there were 4 Cowboys players that got through the entire season, played every single game. That was Scott Drinkwater, Jake Granville, Reece Robson, and Jordan McLean. There are 8 players who had a contract at the North Queensland Cowboys at the start of the campaign, and these 8 players that I'm about to name will not be putting on the jersey for next season. 4 of the 8 were mid-season transfers. Wiramu Greg left for the Parramatta Eels, Isan Masters, the Gold Coast Titans, Josh Maguire to the St. George Illawarra Dragons. That occurred after round 4. And Jake Clifford left right at the halfway mark of the year to join the Newcastle Knights, and he ended up playing his first ever semi-final just the other day. 2 players saw their contract out for the entire year. Whether or not they played first grade or reserve grade, they fulfilled their requirements. And the best of luck is sent to Corey Jensen, who's going to be playing for the foe, Brisbane Broncos, and Francis Molo, who I've had such a rap on for years now. Unfortunately, he's leaving to the St. George Illawarra Dragons. We had 2 medical retirements. These 2 players were integral to the 2015 success. Justin O'Neill, he retired in late August. Due to medical reasons, and the big one, our captain at the very start of the year, Michael Morgan, he retired after round 2. He felt his shoulder go crunch, and he had to retire just a few weeks later. A couple of individual stats. We'll start with the positive, and then we've got to get into the negative. Valentine Holmes was our highest point scorer with 126 points, and Kyle Felt scored 12 tries, the highest of any Cowboy for season 2021. The end of season award ceremony also took place last week, where Murray Tuolangi won the Players Player Award, Jake Granville won the Members Voted Award, and Cohen Hess won the Cowboys Player of the Year for season 2021. Cohen Hess had his best season in a few years. He played 22 games, so he didn't play every single game, but very close to. He was better in the second half of the year, but in my opinion, whilst he was easily top 3, my opinion is that Reece Robson should have walked away with a Cowboys Player of the Year award. As our season progressed, Cowboys regressed down that ladder at a rapid rate, and there's not a whole lot of more positivity to talk about, unfortunately, but I'm going to do my best to keep things light. Valentine Holmes made the most errors of anybody in the NRL this year, and Kyle Felt was inside the top 5 for that stat as well. Scott Drinkwater missed the most tackles in the NRL for season 2021 with 92. As so far as team stats go, please forgive me, I'm going to read off this sheet of paper. So North Queensland were the 3rd most penalised side in the NRL, giving away 115 penalties. They were the most ineffective tackling team in season 2021. We made the 4th highest errors of any other club, and the big one for me as a mad Cowboy supporter, and any other North Queensland fan as well, they equaled their 2nd longest worst losing streak at 10 losses in a row. Their longest losing streak is at 13. This is the worst year in a decade for North Queensland Cowboys. In about May or early June, our Centre of Excellence The Hutchison Builders Centre opened up for the Cowboys some brand new gym equipment, brand new pool spa. It's done nothing. Last season, they only won 3 games at their brand new stadium. Parramatta embarrassing us inadvertently, putting us to shame in that regard. This year, we've won 5, so it is an incremental, minor improvement in that department. But the overall record still stands at 8 wins and 14 losses. And earlier this year, I think the worst year for Townsville happened in many seasons in regards to what happened on the football field. State of Origin occurred at QCB Stadium. Great, awesome, it looked magnifique. 50 points were put on Queensland, and a couple of nights later, and we'll get into this in a little bit more detail later on, North Queensland Cowboys conceded 50. So in the space of 72 hours, Townsville had 100 points put on them. That's bloody dreadful. And something else that we can't lay claim to ever now is that semi-final football has now taken place at Queensland Country Bank Stadium, but it didn't involve North Queensland Cowboys. There was a doubleheader the other night. It was Roosters versus Titans and Penrith versus Souths. So what I'd like to do for the rest of this video is very briefly go through every game that the Cowboys played this year. But the Cowboys season can be summed up in one game, and we'll get to it in time. So let's start with round 1, where Penrith hosted North Queensland out there at Blue Bet Stadium, as it's known now. I was lucky enough to attend that match, and whilst North Queensland couldn't hold or utilise the ball in any way, the defence in the first 50 minutes of the contest held firm, but because they did so much of it, they just fell away. The biggest talking point, arguably, out of that entire round 1 was Todd Payten's press conference. Here it is.
I don't care the type of flack I'm going to cop about that, but this is a long-term decision about Jace's health and my ambition to hold on to the job. For anyone to stay on the park in the middle of the field like Jace does, you're going to cut corners somewhere, and it comes in your defensive movements, your retreat speed, your line speed, and if we let Jace get away with that, the young forwards that we have in our club, I think that's the way you defend. It's not a decision around Jace, it's more a decision around the way that we want to defend as a unit, particularly in the middle of the park.
What about the fifth tackle options?
Yep. Yeah, look, they were good. They were almost an afterthought as halves. You know, that's one of your main responsibilities, is getting your last plays right, and I thought that it was a reaction to the play that was happening rather than, you know, being smart and setting up for it, because that's what the good halves do.
Is that just a gelling thing between Michael and Jake?
Yeah, look, I think we need to get Scotty Drinkwater to do some more kicking. He's got a nice kick off his left foot. But yeah, some coordination, and then at times I thought we were looking to go sideways late in the set rather than, you know, set up and put pressure on him with our kick chase.
Besides for a couple of standout performances throughout the year, as a whole, the club did not get the memo. They didn't take whatever you had to say on board about their defence. In the kicking game as a whole, no one could accept responsibility and execute what was desired of them throughout the entire year. In round 2, North Queensland hosted St. George Illawarra Dragons, and they went down 25 points to 18, even though Cowboys got off to a good start with a try within inside the first 5 minutes. They won the possession stat, but their ineffective tackles is the standout stat in my opinion. It was 22 ineffective tackles to the St. George Illawarra Dragons is 12, and Ben Cummins, the ever-consistent referee, he decided to put Kyle Felt on report for one, didn't put Kyle Felt on report for the other, so thanks very much for that, Ben Cummins. Round 3, we were back at QCB Stadium, back-to-back home games, and we hosted the Gold Coast Titans in an awful game of rugby league. North Queensland completed at 72% to the Gold Coast Titans 68%. And at the time, it was the biggest ever win for the Gold Coast Titans up until later on in the piece. And Josh Maguire got in on the kicking game with 30 kicking meters as well. And after this game, Josh Maguire had an interview on Fox Sports, and he just said there's no fire in the belly, there's no resolve, mental strength. Round 4 was down in Cogra, and it was a part of a doubleheader, and it was a Saturday afternoon game, and I was inside Cogra when the Cronulla Sharks flogged North Queensland 48 points to 10. It was 12-6 with 13 minutes to go. The halftime score was 36-6. What the hell happened there? For this game, Jake Clifford was dropped. Ben Hampton came in and played at halfback, partnering Scott Drinkwater, and Josh Maguire played his final game in Cowboys colours, and his new home was at Cogra, as mentioned earlier on in the video. I guess third time lucky for me in season 2021, because 1 week later, they travelled to Leichhardt Oval, a hostile, emotional environment. Tommy Raudonikis lost his life prior to the game, and North Queensland ambushed him with a brilliant game plan, and they ended up pipping the West Tigers at Leichhardt for the first time since the year 2000. But when you look back on the stats on this game, man, it's very lucky. It's very lucky that North Queensland walked away with the victory. North Queensland were up 28 points to 4 and only just held on. We missed more tackles than the West Tigers at 31 to 14. Every other stat, we'd lost in possession, completion rates, everything. It's just that we got lucky with a good game plan. They came out lackluster and a deer in the headlights. And unfortunately, throughout this game, there were 2 massive injuries. Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow did in his ankle, and he missed how many games? He missed 7 games. And Ruben Cotter, this was his last game until round 23. Round 6, we were back up at QCB Stadium after a fortnight on the road, and we were up there hosting the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs, and this was not a good game as well, save for 15 minutes when Jack Hetherington was sent off for a high shot on Valentine Holmes. There was a bit of pepper, there was a bit of spice, but besides that, round 7 was a completely different story. This is one of the better performances the Cowboys put in for season 2021. They hosted the Canberra Raiders on Anzac Day Eve up at QCB Stadium, and they pipped them 26 points to 24 after being down 24 points to 6 with just a couple of minutes remaining in the first half before a vital try was scored to Ben Condon. And admittedly, that Justin O'Neill try was very fortunate. If I were in the bunker, I probably would have pressed the red button myself, but fortunately they didn't. It was a mad optical illusion there. The Canberra Raiders were in the middle, or they just started their Canberra Faders phase. In the end, we completed at 89%, one of the better completion rates for us this season, and the Canberra Raiders completed at 69%. There was great intensity. We really bought into the fact that they were honoured enough to partake in an Anzac Day Eve clash, and they walked away, and this was 3 wins in a row. And what would happen next? And we travelled down to the Central Coast in Gosford in round 8, and we lost to the Warriors in a performance that was a story of 2 halves. The Cowboys did not come out to play in that first half. They did come out of the sheds in the second half, and they won it on the scoreboard, but it was not enough. They did too much damage to themselves in the first half. Ben Hampton, as our halfback, as a makeshift halfback, put in twice as many kicking meters as a more natural half, Scott Drinkwater, and I think it was his pec. He wouldn't be seen for at least the next 10 or 11 weeks. Round 9, a lot of people have this as Cowboys' best victory for season 2021. I'm not quite there, but in any event, they did beat the Brisbane Broncos by 1 point. It was a really good game of footy. Jason Taumalolo had his best game of the year by far and away. His tackles were up in the mid-30s. His running meters was 231. He scored a bustling try from 10 meters out that leveled the scores with only just a few minutes remaining. And Jake Clifford kicked for 421 meters whilst Hampton was out. Cowboys had won 4 out of their past 5, and in my opinion were well entitled to have some confidence leading up to the match against the Sydney Roosters as a part of the Magic Round. But as we all know, Magic Round changed the game. 65 minutes in, Lachlan Burr was sent to the sin bin for a very soft penalty. It was a part of a crackdown. We all know what happened. I don't think we were robbed. Yes, it made a difference. They did score within inside that 10-minute period. Sydney Roosters won in the end, but I think NRL copped a massive hit overall. Round 11, we were back up at QCB Stadium and we hosted the Newcastle Knights. We got out to a really good lead, and then holy crap, Newcastle Knights hit the lead early on in the second half. It came out of friggin' nowhere. It was scary how much North Queensland dropped off in intensity. Thank goodness they got it back. This was the debut of Highland Lukey as well. There were some early bad signs in this game, and they would come to fruition only in due time, unfortunately. 1 week later, this for me was my favourite win for the North Queensland Cowboys. They beat the New Zealand Warriors up there in a classic, in an absolute classic game of rugby league. Enough said. Now, this is where North Queensland Cowboys season went downhill. This is it. We lost Michael Morgan, our regular starting halfback, back after round 2. We then had Jake Clifford for a time, and he left halfway through the season. Right now, during this bye period for the Cowboys to go join the Newcastle Knights, Ben Hampton, our makeshift utility halfback weapon, was now out with a pec injury. And Tom Dearden down at Brisbane Broncos was not having the best time, so we brought him up. We originally signed him for season 2022, but we got him early. Thank goodness in a way, but we were now working with our 4th string halfback, and Scott Drinkwater and Tom Dearden now had to form a relationship, a combination, and it was always going to take time to iron out those creases. And their first chance to iron out those creases came in round 14 against the Manly Seagulls in what for me was the game of the round. It was 6th Manly versus 7th down there at the newly named Four Pines Park. They got out to a 12-0 lead, North Queensland, and for the first time in 10 long years, North Queensland conceded half a century. I've spoken about it in a reaction video on my channel. If you'd like to check it out, please do so. It is ready, available, and waiting. I don't want to say too much more about it, but they did not really show up in this game. They got out to an easy lead, a really easy lead, and they did not want to defend that night in any capacity, and they deserved to get walloped by the scoreline that they did. After conceding 50 points, you'd imagine that the Cowboys would get up to their home fans and say, right, we're going to put in a good performance for you. Well, they hosted the Cronulla Sharks up there, and they started the game weak, really feeble, and it was a really bad performance. They gave everyone a lift. They gave Sharks supporters or Cowboys haters a scare by getting it back to within 2 points with only minutes to go. But then an absolutely atrocious decision by the referee meant that Reece Robson had to go sit out for the rest of the game. It killed any momentum that we had, and we had all the momentum at that stage. Aiden Tolman, I don't want to say he took a dive per se, but I can understand people who do make the argument for it. It was a result of the crackdown that was happening in the NRL, and it was just wrong, man. It was the wrong decision, but the better team won on the night anyway. So at this stage, I looked at the draw and went, oh my God, we have a seriously intense run. And we also had no idea that New South Wales was about to explode in COVID cases. But before I get there, we had to travel down to McDonald Jones Stadium in Newcastle, and Hammer nearly scored the try of the year, admittedly, in an amazing length of the field play effort, but it was not enough, obviously. And this is where all the COVID cases began to explode in New South Wales. Originally, the boys were going to take on South Sydney at ANZ. It had to be changed due to a Sydney Olympic Park scare, and this match took place at McDonald Jones Stadium. Second week in a row for the Cowboys playing at Newcastle. I thought it could have helped them, lended a massive hand for them, and the Cowboys were up. The Cowboys were up 12-0. The last 10 minutes of that first half was disgraceful. Again, the points just came too easily, and they didn't come to want to try and defend in this game. We've now hit round 18. We have lost 3 in a row. Massive score lines in all 3 of them, and the Cowboys needed to make a stand. I'll give you $50 if you can tell me what happened in this game against the Sydney Roosters on a beautiful Saturday afternoon up there at QCB Stadium. The Cowboys were up 12-0 like they were against Souths, like they were against Manly. What happened? The Sydney Roosters came back and won by 13 plus. In this game, David Bowen went down with an ACL injury, and after the game, Tom Gilbert can be seen shedding tears, and look, I can't blame him, mate. It was an absolute must-win because we knew the Storm were coming within the next week. This was a must-win game, and now we take on the Storm. We're now in round 19 of the competition, and I don't even want to talk about what happened against the Melbourne Storm. We went down 20 points to 16. It was a really brave effort, and the refereeing, the arrogance from the Storm. I don't ever want to be caught talking about this game with the cameras on in an uncut scenario or setting. So the less said about the game against the Storm, the better. Round 20, we were now a mathematical chance. That's really bad, obviously, to be only just a mathematical chance with 5 weeks, 6 weeks left of the competition. And they were all easy win games, or they should have been. But we ran into a red-hot Brisbane Broncos side. Yes, there was a controversial call with Kyle Felt. It should have been a try. It's been a try every other time. And then it just hurt that much more that only a few days later, Jason Saab scored a similar try, and it was given whilst Kyle Felt wasn't. And the better team won in the end. The Brisbane Broncos did. Gold Coast Titans was our next appointment, and that was down at Seabus Super Stadium. And Murray Tuolangi got knocked out in the very first minute. So we were down a player. Ben Condon played only about 15 to 20 minutes before he had HIA protocols put on him. So we were down then by 2, only halfway through this the first half. There was an unbelievable flick pass from Beau Fermor for one of the Titans players to score a try. They put in an okay effort that day, but it just wasn't meant to be. 1 week later, we were up at QCB Stadium hosting the West Tigers. I was afraid of this game because the Tigers had a victory the week before. They would have been feeling really pumped up because we embarrassed them on such a big day at Leichhardt Oval. And the Cowboys put in an insipid performance. They were vapid and they gave everyone a scare, but come on, man, we wouldn't have deserved that win. Cowboys were awful against the West Tigers that day. Round 23, and Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow makes an early return from injury. He was injured just before the clash against the Melbourne Storm due to an appendix issue. And we ended up putting the Parramatta Eels back into form. We were never really in that game. We scored a couple of tries, but North Queensland were never in that game. If it's not the Warriors game that we won by 1 point, this game in Rockhampton, Brown Park, is my favourite win of the year. It happened on my birthday. I spoke to Nick from Australia Live whilst I was about 10 beers in and deep. The Cowboys broke their 10-match losing streak against the St. George Illawarra Dragons, winning 38 points to 26 in a highly, highly entertaining game of rugby league. It was a really good day. We enter round 25, Cowboys' last game in front of their home fans. You hope they can get up for it against the Manly Sea Eagles. Very first set of the game for North Queensland, our $1 million superstar Valentine Holmes drops the ball and only enforces more that he is the worst player for this year as so far as handling errors go. But if you allow me, I want to show something. I want to dissect a play that typifies everything North Queensland for 2021. With only under 4 minutes to go, the scores are locked at 6-all. It's fifth tackle, and the Cowboys are inside the Manly Sea Eagles half. Scott Drinkwater on his right-hand side has a straight line of defense ready to chase the ball and defend stoutly and box them in to the best of their abilities. Instead, what Scott Drinkwater does, he receives the ball from dummy half, he looks to the right and thinks, nah, I'm not going to do the low risk, more poignant play. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go down the short blind side and I'm going to try and weave and try and find a hole where I can kick or chip over the top for myself. What he does is he finds nothing and he kicks the ball only 7 meters to the left of him and it goes into touch. The very next set that Manly have is starting from 25 meters out from their own try line instead of starting 10 meters from their own try line. The Cowboys defense gives us 6 again, and the Manly Sea Eagles score a try. It's 12-6. That try doesn't happen if Drinkwater puts the ball way deep into Manly's defensive zone. And the Cowboys have an opportunity with a straight line to box them in. That doesn't happen if Drinkwater puts in a better kick. And he didn't. He took a cocky, arrogant, lazy option. The Cowboys could not defend it. Manly scored. Manly Sea Eagles scored one more try before halftime. And within 4 minutes, less than, the halftime score was 18 points to 6. North Queensland put in a decent second half. It's unreal to think that the final scoreline read 46 points to 18, albeit against a great attacking Manly squad. Let in 4 tries with 14 minutes to go. Does that sound familiar? In that round 1 press conference Todd Payton gave, he said defense needs to be better. Halves and last tackle plays need to improve. In reality, North Queensland took steps backwards in season 2021. Their defense was the worst it's been in a decade. They finished 15th. Bulldogs got the wooden spoon, and rightfully so. But Cowboys and Bulldogs were second last and last, same positions, in 2008. Whatever game plan Todd Payten had in the preseason, it hasn't worked. No one has gelled with it. And Todd Payten, in his final round press conference, indicated that we're going to need someone to come in and teach them how to be mentally stronger and how to be physically better, defensively attacking everything. So they're half resetting. And this year was all for nothing. And if you look at season 2022, right now in the middle of September, Peter Hiku is coming. He can do some wonderful things at centre. We got Chad Townsend coming up to North Queensland on $850K a year for the next 3 years. It's going to stunt Tom Dearden, who I thought was becoming one of Cowboys' better players, and there's now got to be a new combination formed with Drinkwater and Townsend, which is going to take time. But it's been brought for professionalism. If Jason Taumalolo and Jake Granville and Kyle Felt and Valentine Holmes, who have won premierships, if they can't show what professionalism is all about, what's Chad Townsend gonna do when he has been out of form for about 18 months now? And this notion that Townsend's coming up to try to unlock Valentine Holmes for next year, I don't buy that at all. They wouldn't know each other for a bar of soap. It's been that long since they've played together. So those are the only two signings that North Queensland have made to try and bring someone up and inject some sort of positivity or some sort of momentum into the club. Now, Viliami Kikau is ready and waiting, but he's going to be very expensive if North Queensland do go for him. He's looking for a 9 to 950K multi-year deal, which is a bit of a tall order, dude. So instead, what I would do is, because Cowboys are still sitting on a bit of a war chest, Hamaso Tabuai-Fido's contract is up at the end of next year. Sign him up for years, and we develop and we trust Jeremiah Nanai and Hylam Lukey to be those new age damaging edge back rowers. And we'll build a game around those three blokes, in my opinion, with Reece Robson, who again, I thought was Cowboys' best player for season 2021. Valentine Holmes, our $1 million a season bloke, he has not lived up to the billing. He has had injuries. He's gone off to play State of Origin as well. Next year's his third year, and it's like 3 strikes and you're out. Jason Taumalolo as well, probably, unfortunately, not all of it's his fault. It's been his worst year in first grade. I can't remember him having a worse season. He had a great game against Brisbane, and besides that, he hasn't really been scouted. And all this talk about Scott Drinkwater being the best option at half for us, he probably is, but there's this sort of theory about, look, he'll knock on a lot of times, but those times where he keeps the ball, kicks it well, he's great. You just gotta keep him. It's risk over reward. Well, there's no reward. All right, I take that back. At Leichhardt Oval, he scored that magnificent try. But that's luck. Yeah, it's risk over reward. But there's no creativity to our halves. We're kicking and praying that someone's going to get on the end of it and flick it out to one of our edge players to score that try. Nothing's getting created. It's frustrating, mate. Clear that our defense needs to improve. Our middle forwards just aren't keeping up with this new 6 again pace
that's been implemented, or if they can do something to try and create a good defensive system in the off season, I mean, bloody do it. Take it. I don't want to sit here and go through every single individual in the squad, because as a whole, as a rating, this club gets a 4 out of 10 for this year. Maybe that's generous, maybe it's not. But for me, my club gets a 4 out of 10 for this year, and I sincerely hope things improve for next season, because otherwise, exactly. Ladies and gents, that's it from me. That's been my Cowboys 2021 season review. I hope you enjoyed it. I definitely stuck my head into the computer and the books for this one. So again, I hope you enjoyed it. I had fun making it as well, even though it took bloody all day, as I'm sure you can tell from the natural lighting or lack thereof. Expect a whole lot more content from me coming up in the not too distant future, and take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Go Cowboys.